Reality versus expectation. How the most sophisticated slave industry of the 20th century was created. In this video, we are going to show you the lucrative business created by the dictator Fidel Castro at the cost of exploiting Cuban doctors and how they have been used as agents of political influence in other countries.
Wow!
Within the medical brigades, the regime introduces agents of intelligence to infiltrate Latin American countries. A brief history of the Cuban medical missions. Chile is considered to have received the first brigade of Solidarity doctors in 1960. But, according to the Pan American Health Organization, the first medical brigade was actually sent to Argelia in 1963. In 2005, the dictator Fidel Castro tried to penetrate the American market by creating an international contingent of doctors. They were rejected from entering the United States. After this failed attempt, the tyrant Castro created the international contingent of doctors specialized in disasters and serious epidemics, Henry Reeve. Henry Reeve was a brigadier general in Cuba's Army of Liberation. He has nothing to do with medicine or communism. How much money does the regime make from international missions? According to testimonies and investigations of human rights organizations, the Cuban state keeps 70 to 90% of the salary of its medical workers. Most of the medical missions are counted as professional services export, one of the island's main sources of foreign exchange over tourism. The export of services was consolidated by a doctor exchange agreement for Venezuelan oil with the government of Hugo Chavez in 2003. The countries that contract the medical services from the Cuban state do not disclose specific details of the transactions. There is no transparency. Human rights organizations have denounced that the Cuban medical personnel are forced to be a part of political propaganda in other countries. The Cuban medical missions have caused complaints, denunciations, and legal actions on the part of Cuban doctors in several countries for human rights violations and labor exploitation. Cuban doctors in several countries have denounced and even taken legal action against the medical missions for the violation of human rights and labor exploitation by the regime. The Palermo Protocols. Trafficking in persons shall mean the recruitment, transportation, transfer, harboring, or receipt of persons by means of the threat or use of force or other forms of coercion, of abduction, of fraud, of deception, of the abuse of power or of a position of vulnerability, or of the giving or receiving of payments or benefits to achieve the consent of a person having control over another person for the purpose of exploitation. Exploitation shall include, at a minimum, the exploitation of the prostitution of others or other forms of sexual exploitation, forced labor or services, slavery or practices similar to slavery, servitude, or the removal of organs. How the Cuban medical missions are a form of slavery and exploitation. By means of deceptive contracts that do not guarantee the well-being and safety of health workers. By confiscating Cuban passports from health workers. This is a violation of human rights. If any doctor abandons the mission, they are forbidden to enter Cuba for 8 years. This is family separation. The Cuba state takes 70 to 90% of the health workers' salary. This is labor exploitation. Health workers go under strict curfews, losing the right of movement. This is controlled by military personnel posing as health workers in the missions. Cuban health workers are forbidden from getting married to or having relationships with anyone from other countries while being at the missions. The Cuban medical missions are not humanitarian and solidary. They are a form of modern-day slavery and a lucrative process to finance the Cuban totalitarian state. Health workers are a captive workforce of the Communist Party which violates their human rights and freedom. Through this labor exploitation, health workers are used as a tool for political propaganda in other countries. The Cuban doctors have been victims of sexual harassment, abuse, and even death.